Part 1. The Drive. I left before sunrise. I told myself I would sleep on it, that I would wake up in the morning and the feeling would be gone, and I would unpack the truck and put the files back in the box and go back to pretending none of this was real. I did not sleep. I sat in my kitchen until 4 in the morning, staring at the map on my phone. Marble Fork, 8 hours. I had the route memorized before I realized I was memorizing it. At 4:30, I was in my truck. I do not remember deciding to leave. I remember being in the kitchen. And then, I remember being on the highway with the sun coming up behind me and the desert flattening out ahead. Like the hours between those two things did not happen. Like someone cut them out with scissors. That should have scared me enough to turn around. It did not. And the fact that it did not scares me more than anything else. I drove west through Arizona, through the desert, past Flagstaff, into California. The landscape changed slowly. Desert turned to scrubland turned to grass, and then the mountains started. The Sierra Nevada. I had never seen them before. They are bigger than I expected. That sounds like a stupid thing to say, but it is true. You see mountains on television and in photographs, and you think you understand what they are. And then you drive toward them, and they keep getting bigger, and they do not stop. The sky disappears behind them. The road curves into their shadow, and the temperature drops, and the trees get taller and denser, and the light changes. By early afternoon, I was driving through pine forest on a 2-lane road that climbed in long switchbacks up the western slope. The air coming through my vents smelled different, colder, wetter, full of something I could not name. No, I could name it. I just did not want to. It smelled like the files, like the inside of that box, like the thing that has been on my skin for weeks. Earthy, sweet, and getting stronger with every mile. Part 2. The Trailhead. The trailhead was not easy to find. It was not marked on any of the modern maps I had checked. I had to use the coordinates from the 1951 survey report and cross-reference them with a forestry map I bought at a gas station 2 hours back. The parking area was just a wide spot in the dirt at the end of a fire road. Overgrown, no signs, no trail register, no indication that anyone had been here in a very long time. I sat in my truck for about 10 minutes after I turned the engine off. I do not know what I was waiting for. Permission, maybe. A reason to turn around. A phone call. Anything. Nothing came, so I got out. The air hit me immediately. Cold, wet, and that smell. It was everywhere. Not faint like it had been in my garage. Not lingering like it had been on my hands. It was thick, present. Like walking into a room where someone has been cooking all day, and the walls have absorbed it. The forest floor in autumn. That is what the geologist wrote in 1951. He was right, but he left something out. There is a sweetness underneath it that does not belong to leaves or soil. It is deeper than that. Older, like something that has been growing in the dark for a very long time and has only now reached the surface. I followed what was left of the trail. It was barely visible, overgrown with ferns and fallen branches. Nobody maintains a trail that nobody is supposed to walk on. The survey report said the cave entrance was approximately 2 miles from the trailhead, at the base of a limestone shelf on the western slope. I had the description memorized. I did not remember memorizing it. Part 3. The limestone shelf. I found the shelf after about 90 minutes of walking. It rose out of the slope like a wall, maybe 30 feet high. Gray-white limestone, fractured and weathered, with trees growing out of the cracks at the top. The moment I saw it, I stopped walking. I recognized it, not from the photographs in the file. There were no photographs. I recognized it the way you recognize a place from a dream. The shape of it, the way the trees framed it, the angle of the light hitting the rock face. I have never been here. I have never been to California. But standing at the base of that shelf, I felt like I was remembering something rather than seeing it for the first time. I do not have an explanation for that. The cave entrance was at the base of the shelf, exactly where the report said it would be. But it was not open. Someone had sealed it with concrete. A rough cap, maybe 4 feet across, poured directly over the opening. The edges were uneven where the concrete had been shaped by hand against the rock. It was old, decades old, cracked in places, moss growing in the seams. But it was not solid anymore. There was a crack running diagonally across the cap, about 2 inches wide at the widest point, and from that crack, air was moving. I could feel it on my face from 6 feet away. A steady, cool current pushing outward through the crack, like the mountain exhaling, slow and constant and patient. The mountain was breathing. I crouched down near the crack. I should not have. I know that now. But at the time it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Like I had walked 2 miles and driven 8 hours specifically to kneel in the dirt and put my face near a hole in the ground. The air coming through the crack was cool and damp, and it carried that smell, concentrated, undiluted. Not the faint version that had been clinging to my skin. The source. This was where it came from. This was what the geologist smelled at 600 feet. But I was smelling it at the surface, through a 2-inch crack in a concrete seal that had been here for over 70 years. Whatever is growing down there has not stopped. It has been growing this whole time, in the dark, behind the seal, for 70 years, and it is pushing through. Part 4. Lost Time. I need to tell you what happened next, but I am not sure I can do it in order because the order does not make sense. I was crouching by the crack. I remember that. I remember the air on my face. I remember leaning closer than I should have, close enough that my hands were on the concrete and my face was inches from the opening. And then I was standing 30 feet away. I do not remember standing up. I do not remember walking. I was at the crack, and then I was not. Like someone had picked me up and set me down somewhere else. Or like time had skipped forward and left a hole where the middle should have been. The light was different. When I had crouched by the crack, it was mid-afternoon. The sun was still above the ridge. Now, the sun was behind the trees. The shadows were long. The temperature had dropped. I looked at my phone. It was after 5. I had lost almost 2 hours. 2 hours. Crouching by a hole in the ground. Or not crouching. I do not know what I was doing for those 2 hours, because I was not there for them. My body was here, but I was somewhere else. Or something else was here, and I was gone. My hands were dirty, not just dusty from the concrete. My fingernails had dirt under them, dark soil, and my palms had fresh scratches on them, thin red lines, like I had been gripping rough rock. There was limestone dust in the scratches. I looked at the concrete cap. The crack was the same size. I had not broken through. I had not moved the seal. But the scratches on my hands were real, and the dirt under my nails was real, and 2 hours of my life were gone. I looked around the base of the shelf. About 15 feet from the sealed entrance, half hidden by ferns, there was a second opening. Smaller, not much wider than a person. It had not been sealed. It had not been on the survey map. It looked like it had opened recently, maybe from erosion or a rockfall. The edges were fresh, broken. The dirt around the opening was disturbed, scuffed, like someone had crawled through it. I looked down at my knees. They were muddy, both of them, the kind of mud you get from crawling. I backed away from the shelf. I did not run. I wanted to run, but something in my body would not let me move fast. Like I was walking through water. Like part of me did not want to leave. I made it back to the truck. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors, and I did not start the engine for a long time. I just sat there looking at my hands, at the scratches, at the dirt, at the mud on my knees. Part 5. The Drive Home. I drove home through the night. I did not stop except for gas. I did not eat. I kept the windows up and the heat on even though it was not cold, because I did not want to smell the air outside. Somewhere around midnight, driving through the desert east of Barstow, I caught myself reaching for the steering wheel to make a turn. There was no turn. The highway was straight, but my hands moved on their own toward a road that was not there. I corrected and kept driving, but I checked the map later. If I had turned where my hands wanted to, I would have been heading toward a dirt road that leads into a canyon. A limestone canyon. I got home before sunrise. I went straight to the garage. I do not know why. I should have gone to bed. I should have showered. Instead, I went to the box. I sat down on the floor next to it, and I opened the first folder I touched. It was a file I had not read before. Thin, just 2 pages. A ranger's report from 1947. A different park, a different state, but the same pattern. A man found near a cave entrance, alive but not responsive, covered in mud, scratches on his hands, limestone dust in the wounds. He had been missing for 3 days. When he finally spoke, 2 weeks later in a hospital bed, he said only one thing. He said he could still hear it, breathing. I put the file down. I looked at my hands. The scratches from Marble Fork were still fresh. The dirt was still under my nails. I can still hear it too. Not with my ears. It is not a sound. It is more like a pressure, a low, constant awareness that something is there, underneath everything, and it knows I came to visit. I should not have gone to Marble Fork. I knew that before I left. I know it more now. But I also know something else. I am going to go back. Not because I want to, because every night since I got home, I have woken up at my back door again, barefoot, hand on the handle, and each night I am a little closer to opening it. The man in the 1947 file was found at the cave entrance 3 days after he disappeared. He had no memory of walking there. He had no memory of going inside, but the mud on his body was from deep underground, deeper than anyone had mapped. I looked at the mud on my knees from Marble Fork. I had assumed it was surface mud, dirt from around the entrance. But it was not brown. It was dark gray, almost black, cold to the touch, and it smelled like the inside of the earth. I do not think I was outside for those 2 hours. I think I was under. Part 6. Closing. I have 39 folders left in the box. I am going to keep reading them. I am going to keep recording. Because whatever is happening to me, the only thing I can control is making sure someone knows about it. The files go back to 1931, almost 100 years of people disappearing the same way, walking out of their camps barefoot, found miles away with no memory, or not found at all. And every time someone tried to document it, the report was pulled, and the cave was sealed, and the ranger was moved to a desk, or a hospital, or a grave. I understand now why they sealed the caves. It was not to keep people out. It was to keep it in. And at Marble Fork, the seal is cracking. These are the buried archives.